day 11 of our shutdown, our global vacation, our global, what do we call it? Our global timeout here in Syracuse, New York. But I'm not going to talk about the COVID virus today. I've just spent the whole day consulting with clients, and I'm fired up to talk to you about this thing I've noticed over years, which has to do with thin women and how they're not properly treated in the medical system around osteoporosis. So just this last thing this evening, I see a woman who's a thin woman, weighs maybe 117 pounds, who had low bone density. Now remember, bone density is linearly directly related to weight. If you have low weight, you're going to have low bone density. That does not necessarily mean that the bones are weak. We know that what determines the weakness of bones are multiple risk factors, not just bone density. In fact, multiple risk factors are more important than bone density. Do you take medications that damage bone like steroids, proton pump inhibitors, antidepressants? Do you have a history of personal fracture? This woman had none. Do you have a family history? Did your parents, did your grandparents fracture a hip? This woman had none of that. Are you totally physically inactive? Do you smoke? Do you take excessive alcohol? Do you have diseases that would cause bone loss? This woman did not have these risk factors. And yet, because she was thin, because she was to have a low bone density, without doing any thorough workup, she was told to take Fosamax at first, right after menopause. You know, in menopause, everyone loses bone. Thin women lose more. She lost bone during menopause. They gave her Fosamax. This made her terribly sick. She could only do it a short period of time. A few years go on, she loses more bone density, so they then tell her to take hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and a few years later she develops ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer is a very nasty cancer. Luckily, they found this in the early stage, and she, of course, dropped the hormone therapy. Her doctors realized that it was caused by this hormone therapy, and that she then was able, she's been 3.5 years in remission from that cancer. But my point is, it's only the people at very high risk of fracture that we should even think about drug treatment. And the first thing we should do is look for the causes of bone loss. If this woman is losing bone too much, if you see your bone densities are going down exceptionally, like too much, we know during menopause, the first year before the last period to 5 years after, the average woman loses 10% of her bone mass. Some people lose 20%. Thin women lose more. And so if you say the bone loss is excessive, instead of going to a drug, we should look to see what is the cause of the bone loss. Are there lifestyle things? Are there nutritional things? Are there drug therapies? Are there diseases? Are you losing calcium in the urine? All of this I've written about on betterbones.com. We have championed the idea of doing a medical workup to look at the causes of bone loss. You can find that workup on betterbones.com. We have championed the idea of looking at total risk factors. We have actually a risk factor assessment, which concludes many, many of the important things. You can go to betterbones.com, do your own risk factor assessment, and then think, how can I rebuild my bone health naturally? This particular woman, one of the major things that was troubling her was anxiety and worry. And, you know, I've been writing about this, and I'm going to definitely write a book on it, because thin and worry go together many times. When you worry, severe anxiety is based in fear. As I've written this blog recently, fear actually causes you to take some essential protein out of bone, osteocalcin, put it in the blood to shut down the part of the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic part, that lets you rest and relax, so that your sympathetic flight or fight response can go full tilt. This is an amazing way that fear and anxiety damage bone, much less raising cortisol and raising all the stress hormones which directly break down bone. So I'm steamed up today because I really have spent much of 30 years working with thin women who are very worried about bone health, and it's time the medical system give them a fair shake. Look to see what their real risk factors are, treat for hidden causes, and use natural therapies until you get to a state where if a person is just fracturing too much and they can't do anything about it, then that's another situation. I rarely see that. That's a situation when drugs might be called upon, but I rarely see it, but there are situations of that. The other part I'm steamed up about is realize that anxiety and stress is very damaging to bone. And it's often linked to a lot of worry. It's often linked to sleep disruptions. I myself know about this because I've struggled with all these things. And in fact, all of my interest in health and bone health is because I had poor health. I saw my family's problems and I wanted to solve them. So now I'm not shy in saying, look, I found some solutions. I'm going to offer you my solutions. If they work, do them. But thin and worried people, we have a campaign to get better treatment with bone health. So just the things I like for anxiety and what I suggested to this woman, my favorite product is this Serenisol. This is a product that was developed by another group I work with. It's a wonderful product of phosphatidylserine, other natural components that help quiet down that stress response. You can tell if it helps you out. You can tell in a month or so. For people like this woman had a hard time. Some people can't fall asleep. This Mood Guard product, GABA, different components of GABA, very good if you can't fall asleep. And then of course there's pure tryptophan that can really help both with anxiety and with sleeping. We have a whole gigantic sleep protocol, but what I'm telling you, get to the cause of the anxiety. Do your meditation, do the stress reduction. Think about these thought leaders who are realizing that we create neural pathways in childhood. Automatically, we get triggered over and over again. When somebody says we're not good enough, we get triggered into this whole cascade, for example. So, there's a lot you can do about every problem you have. Being thin and being worried adds to bone loss, but it is not necessarily a recipe for fractures. And often taking strong pharmacological therapy will take you in the wrong direction. We always look for the cause of the problem. We always look to naturally solve the problem. And we always look to stay as strong as possible. And to work with that divine, that amazing quality, that divine nature within us. So, I'm steamed up. It's late in the afternoon. I'm going to go eat and rest, meditate. I hope that you all are taking the time to meditate, taking the time to think during this global timeout, what kind of world do I want to create? Tomorrow, I'm going to share a really interesting lecture I heard where some real thought leaders were saying, wow, what can we learn from this current situation? What kind of a world do we want to create? This very night, you might sit down and think, what kind of world do I want to create for myself? What kind of food do I want to be eating? What kind of environment do I want to be in? What do I want to see my kids? What kind of environment do I want for them? This is an exciting time. We're going to all come out of this, and we're going to come out of it with greater immunity and hopefully stronger bones as we learn more and more how to take care of our bone health and our total health. Susan Brown, great talking with you. Be in touch tomorrow. Sending you my love and caring. Be well.